All right, so I'm back. Actually, I had some issues with my desk, and I had to take it apart and fix it and do some last-minute soldering, but my standing desk is back in working service. And where we were looking or last left off was I had a bit of confusion over this service decorator, because when we look at implementation for these services, if we go over to the comps directory here, and let's say I was to look at anything like LLMs, right? So go into here, LLMs, we go into source, we have text generation, and we go into the actual code here. And when we look here and we scroll on down, we saw that it was registering. It should register the microservice here. And so my confusion is like, okay, if we're registering the microservice on this end, I'm just gonna fix my desk there. It's do we have to register on the other side? Because in our mega service, we register it, but I think what's going on here is that these things are actually provided to you as containers. And the reason I know this is if we go over to maybe not say chat Q&A, but we'll go over to, I'm sure they're in chat Q&A, but we'll go over to one that I know absolutely will make more sense, into translation. And if we go into this one, into Docker Compose and into Intel and into Xeon and into the Compose YAML file, you're going to find this here. And so this line looks a little bit confusing, but what's happening here is that the registry is this will default to Docker Hub, and it's saying in here we want to go to Docker Hub into OPA. So there's hyphen and then OPA. So if we were to look up OPA and say Docker Hub like this, and we go in the Docker Hub profile, then we can see that all these models are here, right? So going back over to here for a moment, this one here, we see LLM text gen, and so we can probably find LLM text gen somewhere in here, right? So we do this. And there it is. And so basically what it's doing is it's loading this model. So the images are already built for us. We don't have to build them, right? And so we can just reference them. But where I was kind of getting confused was the fact that when we look in the chat Q&A, so let's go back to that one for a moment. So we'll go here, and chat Q&A is like the big deal one to talk about. We go into this one, and we go into Intel, CPU, Xeon. Again, it doesn't matter that it's Xeon because we can kind of work around those things that are different. But if we go here, what I'm looking for is trying to understand, okay, why in here does it not use LLM service? So if we go here, we have vLLM, and this one is the same equivalent of Ollama, so it's spinning up that particular service, and you can see one that's delivering via here. But where the confusion is that if you go over to the components over into here, into comps, where is vLLM, right? And so I think if we go to third parties, this is probably where it would be. Yeah, vLLM. And so it's actually under here. And so if we go into source here, you'll notice that there's just some basic configuration, but it's not really doing a whole lot of code. Like you can build obviously from here, but I'm just saying that it's not wrapping it with a PI file and doing a bunch of layers and stuff like that. So we can serve up the Ollama one from OPA because they probably have a build there. I didn't do that before. I did Ollama. But it's possible that if we go back here for a moment, they might have an OPA or they might have an Ollama specific one. And they do, and so we didn't use that one. But it says this image has been deprecated since version release of 1.2, which is fine because we don't really need it. But if we were to go back to vLLM, or let's say TGI as another example, it says this has been deprecated since the release of version 1.2. So what version are we using? Because clearly some of these are still being utilized. I don't know. Let's go here and say vLLM. Okay, so these ones are still around. The vLLM one's here, but let's go back to TGI. This is LVM TGI, not necessarily the same one we're looking for. So what I'm trying to find here, this is LM TGI. I wonder why it's been deprecated. Because if we go here into our directory, we can see TGI is here, we can see Ollama is here, but vLLM is still around. I mean, really, if you're going to be putting things into production, probably vLLM is the best in terms of the fact that it can be distributed. So maybe they're saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't use these ones for whatever reason. I wonder if we can figure out why they're deprecated. So if we go over to here on the right-hand side, because there are different versions of OPA, and here's actually 1.2. This was released last month. And so I'm just going to give this a quick read and see what's going on here that might be different. So just reading this here, there's nothing that says why they're deprecated, but my assumption is the reason is that we can simply choose OLAM as you saw and utilize it. And again, you really wouldn't want to use it in production anyway. So, I mean, we are using it, but I'm just saying that because it doesn't have the same level of robustness of what do you call it, being able to see what you do, probably vLLM would be the better choice. I've always had issues running vLLM locally, but if they already have a container working, that's probably a better approach for us to try to attempt to put in production. But you know, some of these services are front loaded with other ones, so sometimes we run the other ones in the back and the other ones there. But we'll work through here and we'll figure out what we can get. But I think what we should probably do, instead of using Olama, we should use the vLLM service. And so in the chat Q&A, is this where this is? We literally should just copy this one out. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this completely out of here, and I'm going to go back over to Windsurf. And in here, we're going to go to our Docker Compose file. And so obviously we're starting the mega service there, but I'm going to go down. I'm just going to paste this in here. Okay, so now we have the vLLM service, and we can literally just put this in here, and this will be fine. It says 9009 mapping to port 80. So locally it's running port 80 and has 9009. It's mapping the volume data to data. I don't have a data directory here. I'm not sure if I even need one, but let's go back over to wherever that was here. 1 second, I got a few too many tabs. All right, so I just kind of pared it down to here. But anyway, what was I looking for? So I'm over here, and I'm actually kind of wondering, does chat Q&A have a data directory? Because I don't recall that it had one. But the reason why that matters is that this is mapping to the data directory. So if there is any kind of data, it's going to go there. But I don't see one here. So this might be a non-issue, but I'm just kind of curious as to why that's configured that way. But we'll go down here, and so we have SHM size 120 whatever. I don't know what this configuration is. I'm going to assume it's a vLLM specific thing. So I'm going to type in vLLM, and we'll take a look at what we have. If we go over to here to the vLLM docs. Oops. So here it is. You can either use IP host flag or SSH sized flag to allow containers to access the host shared memory. Okay, so it's talking about, sorry, I'm just fixing my my mat that I stand on here. But it's talking about something to do with shared memory. So that kind of makes sense with that information there. And I guess it's really just specifying the amount of shared memory it wants to utilize. I'm not a super expert at this stuff, so we'll leave it alone as its default settings here. But if we go and look to here, we have no proxy, HTTP proxy. And these are settings that we kind of expect to see in general. But I guess my question is, like, how does it work with these settings? So if we go back over to here and we go over to comps and we specifically look, not in this text generation area, but we go down to third parties and we go into the vLLM here. And we go into the source, there must be a reason why, right? So I'm not seeing anything in particular here that would indicate it. So maybe these are settings that vLLM needs to use underneath. So we say no proxy vLLM. And yeah, so I think that these settings here, it's more a convention than a standard. I don't know the original thing for these settings. So there must be some kind of underlying convention. It might not be vLLM specific, but clearly we don't have to, that's not like extra logic that's being implemented. And it's just something that you probably would do if you use vLLM anyway. Here we have the Hugging Face token, the LLM model ID, so the model that we want to run. We have vLLM torch profile directory. If we need to mount that, we can do that as well. If we need to actually do anything there. We have a health check to make sure the service is running. And we have a command here to say model, LLM model ID, and start on the host. So this is what it would launch initially. So basically if we typed in vLLM or whatever the command server, this is what it's going to run. So that looks pretty good. I only really want to run this service. I don't need the mega service, but I'm going to go ahead and just run this service individually. And so it's going to go download this one. And so we're going to go here on the left-hand side. I wonder if there's a way that we can make a bin script for this. So I'm going to go here, and we have this message, which is going and pinging the actual mega service. So I really want one that's going to test vLLM test. right? And so the idea is that this one will go directly to here. I don't know if we can pass to vLLM that payload there as such, but we go back over to here. We didn't specify any specific kind of LLM that we want to run. So if we go back over to here, right, we didn't say, I want to run this LLM model ID, right? We probably should have done that. And we also didn't specify the Hugging Face API token. So, I mean, it is pulling the image there, so we do have to pull. It's kind of large. It's crazy that it's 3 gigabytes, but maybe that's normal. But what I'm thinking here is, yeah, so now vLLM's running on port 9009. But what I'm thinking here is we need to start up this container with environment variables, right? We can't just do it this way. So I'm wondering, you know, it's been a while, but let's find out if there's a way. So, you know, is there, oops. That's not what I wanted. It took me all over the page here. But I have a feeling that we can't really use this right-click Docker up, Docker down unless there's a way to load environment variables. So I'm going to go here. You know, is there a way to load an env file when starting Docker compose up or a specific service? Because before I remember it was a bit tedious to set them, and so, you know, it's been a while, so I'm wondering if there's just something new. Yes, there are 2 ways. Docker compose automatically loads the .env file in the same directory as your Docker compose file. Oh, it does. Well, then that makes our life super easy then. So we can go ahead here and just make a new file. I don't know if it's true. Just because it says that doesn't mean it's true. We'll go ahead and set this .env here. And there's a few things I will want before we do that. I'm just going to do a .get ignore. And we're going to go ahead and just ignore the .env so we don't have any issues here. I'm going to go back over to here and what were the things that the Docker compose file wanted? We don't need to set no proxy. Like, it will work even if we don't set the default one, but I'm going to go ahead and copy these here. I'm going to paste this in here. And what I want to do is bring these to the wall like this. And we're going to need to set up these 2 values. So I think Hugging Face, the format is like this. So there's our Hugging Face token, which this doesn't look like the usual Hugging Face way of expressing it, but that's totally fine. We'll go ahead and do this. I don't know what we need to do for llama. So say like llama 3.2, 1 billion. Keeping the model small at this point. We can use other models if we want, but I need my Hugging Face token. So I'm going to go over to here, and I'm going to go to Hugging Face. And I'm going to go ahead and grab myself a token. So I'm going to go to here on the right-hand side, Access Tokens. And I need to put in my password, so give me just a moment. So I'm just creating a token. I've showed you multiple times how to do that. It's in Access Tokens here, and I'm going to give it read-only access. It doesn't need write access, so I'm not going to bother with that today. I'm going to go back over to here, and we're going to go ahead and paste in this. Now the question is, like, what do we need to provide as to vLLM so we can start a model? And so I'm going to go over to vLLM and see if we can find it through their documentation here, or even through an example. So here's this generating models. I don't need to generate a model, I just need to use them, but here they're specifying the models like this. So I'm thinking maybe this is a way that we can specify the, I mean, these are obviously other ones, but here, yeah, so this it's kind of like this format here. So that's why it needs the Hugging Face endpoint. So I'm going to type in Hugging Face llama 3.2, 1 billion. And we'll go over to here. And so now what I can do is just copy the title up here. And this is actually what we're supposed to be providing. So if we go back over to our code down below, this is what we need to run that model. Okay, so we have those 2 settings. Is there anything else we need to set? We set these 2 most important things. And so this should be enough to start it up. The container is running, or was running, at least it was trying to. Terminated will be reused as a task. So I'm going to go try running that again, and I'm wondering if it's going to try to pick up those environment variables. Because here it's now running on port 9009, which is really good. I'm going to go and I'm going to view the logs, and I want to see if it's trying to pull or do anything. It says invalid credentials in the authorizer. So even though we had utilized it there, I'm not sure if it's actually picking up that there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let it stop. It's probably going to fail on its own, or it probably already has. Terminated will be reused by tasks. Okay, so for now what I'm going to do, because I don't know if this is using Docker compose up, but I'm just going to comment out our mega service for now, right? And same thing down here. Sorry, 1 second. And so here, what I want to do is I want to go back over to here. I'm just going to do a Docker compose up manually because I'm hoping that it's going to load that .env. Now, I don't know if it really is going to load it. I'm kind of skeptical of it, but it's saying invalid credentials again. So that makes me think that it's not actually loading that nvars. So as a sanity check, I'm just going to go ahead and drop in the Hugging Face token right here directly and these values. I'm going to hard code them temporarily just for a moment, because that way we can rule out if that's our problem or not. And then we can be like, okay, well then what do we do to fix that? I didn't really believe the LLM when it said that it could load those, so I'm just not convinced. So we'll go ahead and we'll do this. And we'll do that. We'll do that. Obviously, you would not want to commit this code, so you gotta be real careful here. And here, I'm just gonna give this a space here, a space there. So now they're hard-coded. So we should have a better chance of getting this to run now. So we're starting it up. And now we are not having an issue. Right? And it might even attempt to download the model here. So I'm just kind of watching it. When I used to run the chat Q&A, I think I used to use TGI, and maybe there still is a TGI variant. But what it would do is the TGI service would start up, and then it would start downloading the model, right? Here we go. We got a runtime issue. What is the issue we're having? CUDA graph is not supported on CPU, which is fine. I don't care. I have an OK graphics card, or OK CPU here. Triton is not compatible or not compatible with the CPU related stuff. Uni is not supported on here. CUDA is not supported on CPU fallback. So I'm trying to figure out what its problem is, because we did choose that Xeon option, but we aren't bringing anything any special. We're just bringing in vLLM, right? We're not, the other stuff is not in particularly anything. So I'm just trying to figure out what is its problem. Like, was that image built specifically for Xeon? I don't think so. Like, obviously for x86 or whatever the chipset is here. But it says Docker Compose, the attribute version is obsolete and will be ignored. So that was something that James had said earlier. So we'll go ahead and just take this out. So we don't have to see that error anymore. But I'm trying to understand what is our issue here. Automatically detected a CPU, which is good. vLLM API namespace 073, okay. And then it goes here, starting the process. Torch profiler is enabled. Automatically detected a platform CPU, that's fine. The model has a long context. This may cause OOM errors in the memory initial phase. Async output processing is not supported on current platform. CUDA graph is not supported on CPU. That's totally fine. Uni is not supported on CPU. That's totally fine. I don't care about that. The model has a long context. CUDA graph is not supported on CPU. Triton is not supported or compatible with the functions available. We'll go down below here. And so it's saying, I don't know what it's saying, so we'll go ahead and grab this here. And we'll ask LLM, what do you think the problem is? What? Explain. Let's see if it can come up with anything. It's trying to run on CPU mode, but it's designed for GPU acceleration. The model has a very long context window. The model has a long context window. Add GPU support to vLLM service container. Let's modify it. I never asked it to do anything, but it's just attempting to do it, which is fine. So in here, I do actually have a GPU, and so here it's specifying runtime. I'm not sure how it knows that. You can check if your system is ready. I do have GPUs on this. Are you sure you can set runtime like that? Is that a setting for vLLM? Because I really don't know. Oh, that's interesting. So here we have vLLM service. Deploy resources, reservation devices, NVIDIA capabilities, GPUs. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know anything about this deploy option, right? So we'd have to look it up for vLLM to actually figure that out. If you don't have a GPU, you're not gonna be able to do that. You would just use OLLAMA in this case, but I'm gonna say vLLM OLLAMA or vLLM Docker Compose GPUs. And I'm just trying to find an example of one. And here they're actually doing something like that. So maybe this is something that we can do to get this to deploy. So I'm gonna go back over to my code over here. I'm gonna go ahead and attempt to try to copy this. But I do realize that we're kind of going down a route where I was just hoping that it would kind of work a little bit, but if it's not, this is gonna be kind of an issue for some folks that are following along here. But I'm just gonna try this because I'm just curious if it can actually launch it up and use my GPUs. I do have that NVIDIA card, the NVIDIA 480 here. Would be interesting would be to try this on the Intel AI PC because it has built-in iGPUs, and so it might be able to handle it. But we would have to try that separately to go find out. And so I'm going to go ahead and just switch this out over to here. So it now says deploy vLLM. And I think it's at the same level with everything else. It is. So I'm going to go ahead and we are going to stop this and we're going to try Docker Compose up and we'll see what happens this time. So it says error response from Damon could not select device driver NVIDIA with capabilities GPU. Okay, so maybe the configuration is wrong. We saw that other one that used device 01. That's usually how you'd set it. It's not installed, properly configured. Since you're using WSL, you need to configure it separately. Oh, is it not configured? Are you sure? Again, this is specific to my machine. I'm very hesitant to run things that are here, but I'm going to give it a try. I'm not sure what this is doing. It's kind of, I'm not sure why it's prompting me for password. I'm trying to stop it. What is it doing? Just stop. There we go. Close this one out, close this one out. So again, I'm kind of going off the beaten path here, but I'm just trying to find out when I do this, will this let me run it? Because I really want to run vLLM. I keep talking about vLLM and how great it is, but I can never seem to get it to run, which is kind of frustrating. We'll go ahead and copy this. And so that doesn't work. We'll bring this a bit smaller so I can see what I'm doing here. Type and clear. Okay, so I'm going to go to the internet and let's find out what we can do here. Installing the NVIDIA toolkit, don't really want to do that, but it has a bunch of steps here. So for Ubuntu, I don't want that one, but we'll go ahead and grab this. It's probably that's wrong by Windsurf. It doesn't know what the right one is. So we'll go ahead and hit up here. And so now that should be added. I'm going to go over to our docs over here. We're going to go ahead and grab this here. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. You can't locate it. So this is kind of annoying. Maybe we'll do a sudo app update, maybe because I didn't do that first. I was trying to avoid that. We really should do those, but I just don't like waiting. But that was actually really fast. So maybe I was complaining about nothing. So now it's installing the NVIDIA toolkit. And so now maybe I can interface with vLLM here. So I'm going to go back over to here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit up until I get to Docker. Well, I don't have to do that. I just type Docker Compose up. And so now what I'm hoping is that it'll spin it up and it'll find it. I'm not sure why it's saying no configuration file found. Oh, I'm in the wrong directory. That's why. So we'll go ahead here and we'll go into OPEA comps, mega service new. And I'm going to go ahead and type in. What I'm going to type in? I'm going to type in npm docker compose up. And so here it's talking about setting some defaults here. Could not select the device NVIDIA with capabilities GPU. Okay, so we'll give it there again, but I don't think that's the issue. I mean, it could be, but over here you can see that it's saying NVIDIA and it's saying exactly what devices and capabilities. And this is a little bit different. So here it says, you know, check. I already know that you can see it from here, but we'll go ahead and do that anyway. Sometimes the menu gets messed up after running it, so I have to close this tab out, which is kind of annoying. But we will go ahead and reopen this again. We'll type in NVIDIA SMI. So this means that I'm getting input back here. Make sure you have the latest drivers installed. I already do. So this is telling me really stupid things. After this, try running this NW, see if it works. So it really doesn't know what it's saying. It's just giving me nonsense back here. But if we look here, it says capabilities GPU, driver, NVIDIA, count 1. Totally different from this other documentation. I'm not sure how old this one is. 7 months ago. So we'll go over to here. I'm going to just try replacing this like this. And so it's similar. It still says capabilities GPU. And so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to try this out. So we'll say Docker compose up. Yeah, I know. I got to go into the right directory. And so we'll go ahead and we'll go to OPEA comps and we'll say mega services new. And I'm going to do Docker compose up. Okay. So I'm doing Docker compose up and still we have this issue. Error respond, Damien could not select driver NVIDIA view capabilities. This is really annoying. So I'm going to go over to here and we'll go ahead and do this. Take a look. And we'll take a look at the forums. And restart the Docker daemon as instructed. I didn't restart the Docker daemon. And this one is out of date, which is not great. Restart Docker daemon Ubuntu. So let's try that. Maybe it needs to restart that. Service Doctor restart. I don't think that's what it is, but I'll try sudo service CTL restart Docker. I'll put my password in. Sudo service, or we'll say service Docker restart. All right. How do I restart Docker daemon on Ubuntu? Okay, let's see what it tells me. Sudo system CTL, that's what I thought I was doing. Or using the service command. I mean, like, yeah, we'll try this again. Maybe I just typed it wrong. Because now it's hanging, right? It's like it's thinking hard. That makes me think that it's going to restart it. And so I think now it's restarted. Let's go ahead and try Docker compose up. Because it's saying that one thing really matters. Now we're getting a different error, which is good. So we have error response from daemon, failed to create the task container, failed to create the shim task, OCI runtime created fail, unable to start the container, error during the container. Auto-detected mode is legacy. And this might have to do with the fact that I changed some of this stuff here. So I'm going to go back and change it over to this. Okay, so maybe this one is a bit newer, but we'll go ahead and hit up and see what happens. A lot of guesswork here. But if I can get it running, I'd be very, very excited because I never, ever get vLLM to work. But it has to do with, like, you know, the underlying GPUs or what you're using, right? Again, I would be interested to find out, like, what would be the settings on the Intel AI PC. If we go over to here and we go into the mega service, we actually might have that like knowing how we'd utilize for the AI PC. So if we go into our compose.yaml file here and we take a look here, somewhere in here, it might tell us what it's using. And it's using OLLAMA. So it's not even trying to, so if you're using, I guess this makes sense because it is a CPU. So maybe it might be hard to configure vLLM to use the AI PC chips, or maybe it can do it. You just need to do a little bit more work. What I find a lot of times, it's just like you have to do work to figure it out. I know that if I was to take the service and put this onto, what do you call it, AWS, it would just work. Here it says, model architecture, llama for casual LM, fail to inspected. Please check the logs for it. So I'm getting a little bit farther along here. Again, I just really want this to work. And yeah, what is our problem? Failed to be inspected. Please check the logs for more details. What's our problem? Model architecture failed to be inspected. Llama for casual LM. Okay, and this might be vLLM specific. vLLM, the most amazing thing, but you can't ever get to run. So we'll go over here. Yep, vLLM. For a specific model, I don't know how to integrate it with vLLM. Okay. Maybe it doesn't like the model we chose. Okay, we're on Linux. So I'm going to go say like vLLM llama 3.21 bill. So I'm just going to see, maybe there's like a slightly different thing that has to be typed to get it to work. Docker compose. Okay. So here we can see highlighted model weights. The closest model vLLM already supports. What's your difficulty for supporting the model you want? This is from 2024, so there's no way it doesn't work with that. So what I'm just trying to find out is like, what do I set for this? So here they have one. They're using here the, I mean, it's mounting an existing one that's already there in Podman. But it makes me think that it should be, yeah, it should be able to obviously run it. Here's the Kubernetes deployment. I wish it had the Docker container one. But I mean, I would think the environment variables would be the same. But here what you see, they're doing vLLM CPU environment, and then they're saying model llama 3.21 billion instruct here. And then they're specifying them here. I wonder if we go back over to vLLM, do they have an implementation here? If we go to third parties, I wonder if they have a GPU one in particular that we can take a look at. It might not help at all. We do have one, Intel GPU. This is going to be for ARC support, but I'm just going to look at here and see what the difference is. I'm really more interested in the YAML file. Well, I guess that's if it's building it individually, so that's not actually going to help us. What can we do to get this thing to work? Let's go back and stare at it for a little bit here. So model architecture llama for casual LM failed to be inspected. Please check the logs. This is the logs. I don't think there's logs anywhere else. Unsupported architectures. Okay. vLLM supported architectures. So I'm going to go over here and we have a list of supported architectures. Hugging Face. By default, vLLM loads models from Hugging Face. That's great. Transformers fallback supported models. Remote code. Model scope. I wish it would just give us an example, right? Like if they gave us an example, this would be so much easier. But we do have examples over here on the right-hand side. If we can get anything work, maybe even if it's DeepSeek, I don't care. So maybe what we should do, I'm just trying to get a smaller model so we can test this. There's Google Gemma. We could also just do GPT-2. That'd probably be really, really small. If that even is still accessible. Can we use GPT-2? Is that on Hugging Face? Hugging Face. Can we do that? It is here. There is an OpenAI one. I don't know what it would do. But right now I just want to see that it works with anything. I don't care what it works with as long as it works. Although I would be curious to use Gemma. Let's go over to here. And what I'm going to do is just replace this quickly like this. And I'm assuming that it's going to know what this is. Right? If it doesn't, that's totally fine. But we're going to give this a try. And the reason why I didn't put any backslash there is because I didn't see any in that example, right? So here it literally just wrote that. Some of them do have the forward slashes. And so I'm thinking that maybe it already knows how to pick these up. Down below here we have the meta ones. So you have llama 3.1, nothing that says for 3.2, so maybe it can't do 3.2. Yeah, so that's probably our problem. I don't know, like if, yeah, why can't it do 3.2, 1 billion? I guess it's not supported. But here it says llama 2, llama 3.1. Yeah, and this is kind of where, you know, certain models support different models, and so that's probably where we're running into an issue. I'm going to go back over to here, and here it's saying llama for casual LM unsupported. It really wants to focus on that, even though we've overridden it with a very specific one. What we can do is we can go back over to here, and if it's talking about that casual nonsense, we can go here and just specifically target into that one. So I'm going to bring this up here for a second. We'll grab llama for casual, and I'm going to search for that here. It's right here. And so we have some, but they're really, really big. I don't want a big model. I want a teeny tiny model to work with. And that kind of makes it a bit of a challenge. So there must be more options like architecture or something. So yeah, like vLLM configuration. And we'll go back here. And so what I want to know is like, what can we set? Are these all the things we can set? Like, do we have model in here? LLM. Yeah, like I want to go and see if this matches up. So in here we have LLM model ID. Is this something that we can plug into here somewhere? Like I don't even see it. This is what's frustrating. So we'll go here and say LLM model ID vLLM. What a pain. One more thing I want to check is there any kind of wrapping or extraction that this vLLM is doing here? So we know that if we go here and down below, I'm just putting this environment variable here to see if it does anything. It doesn't do anything. So we'll go over to this one here. And so I'm not seeing anything in particular that's changing it, but here it says default hardware mode is CPU. So it is optimized for CPU to begin with. But I swear, vLLM's really, really hard to get working. It's unbelievably hard. But this is kind of confusing because if TGI is now deprecated, version 1.2 since last month, because I've been using OPEA for multiple months, and that doesn't mean that we can't use TGI, but the question is like, why is it deprecated and how will that impact us if we utilize it? And we can still use OLAMA, which is totally fine. But I really, 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 really wanted to use vLLM. Bonus points if anyone gets vLLM to work and documents their challenges here. But you know, my computer's not going to take it if I try to put one of these larger models in here. Go here, vLLM option. Yeah. So in here, it says text generation, like, it's over here, but this is not the same thing. What can we do for this? It's a good question. Again, we're going to stare at the vLLM just a little bit more, and if it's too hard, I'm just going to give up on vLLM here. vLLM already supported Intel CPUs and Gaudi accelerators. That's good. I mean, there's this one here that we can use. It's a little bit big. I wouldn't expect folks to try to download this one, but I can try to work with it here. And I'm going to see if this will help it at all. So if I go here and switch over to, well, but it matters because if that's a CPU, if it's optimized for CPU, it might not run on the, well, it might run the GPUs. vLLM on CPU. Llama 3 8 billion struct. It's not as big, but you can't access Llama 3.2 or Llama 3. It's only Llama 3.2 right now, I believe. Deployment. So the compose file. vLLM. This is just an example of running one. So this is the vLLM server. And there's no additional options here that we have to worry about. And here, what's the entry point for this? But this is using the image called OPEA vLLM, which is here. Right? So it makes me think that there should be a Docker file in here somewhere. But the Docker files are here, so this has to be, well, there's only actually one Docker file in here. There's nothing else. It's just the one. Is this what it's actually building here? And so I'm just carefully looking at this. Ubuntu as dev. I'm just carefully looking here. I realize the font's really small. I apologize. But what I'm trying to find in this is where's vLLM? Because up here we have Ubuntu 22 as dev. So it's pulling it from that. vLLM. Maybe it's installing it manually. So here it's cloning vLLM right here. And it's cloning a very specific branch of it, 066. Let's go take a look here, vLLM. And we'll drop this down. And the latest is 073. So it's on this one here. Okay. And so then it says vLLM build requirements, build LLM with OpenVINO backend. So here it's building it with OpenVINO, which would mean it's CPU optimized, making it so that we should be able to run it on CPUs. But it clearly is, yeah, it's building it. And so we have vLLM. But I guess what I was looking for was there any kind of magic of it passing anything through to it, and it's not. But it's frustrating because I can't find anywhere this option for LLM model ID, right? Like if I could find that in the documentation of vLLM, then that would help us out quite a bit. But even though vLLM looks really well documented, it's like I can't find basic things. We'll go to the Docker file here. You'd think if I just do this and say vLLM, we could find something. Let's go over to here. This is Intel setting it, right? But yeah, I just don't understand, like, where is this environment variable coming from? What if we call it LLM model ID, LLM model ID vLLM? Maybe because it's in caps that it's confused. And so I can't find it. Let's go ask Perplexity. How do I set the model ID? Is there an nvar it takes? vLLM uses several environment variables to configure its system. All environment variables used by vLLM has the vLLM here, but this one has, that's not what we have. We just have LLM model ID. Is there none for the model itself? Can we get an example of using vLLM as in a Docker container? So this is where we might just run into a bus. And to be honest, if we're using local machines, we probably should use Ollama. And yeah, this is what I was expecting it to be. And then here it specifies it as model like this. Okay, but in a Docker compose file. And the command's there. Maybe it has it there. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention. Oh yeah, it sets it right here. Okay. And I mean, I guess we can set it up here. I could also just grab it here like this. Paste it in like that. But I don't think it supports that model, or at least it says it doesn't. Sometimes this stuff moves so fast, you can't necessarily trust what it says. So I know I'm just kind of moving around a little bit, but if we can get it to work, that'd be really, really cool. But yeah, now I'm starting to understand that like if it's optimized for OpenVINO, we should be able to use vLLM on a CPU, but that error that was telling us was throwing us that problem there, which wasn't true. So it says model architecture llama for causal failed to be inspected. Please check the logs for more details. I wouldn't know where to go for logs. This is the logs. Yeah, so you know what? I don't think we're going to be able to use vLLM here. This is what you should use in production, but it would just take a huge uplifting. The only reason why I wanted to use it was because I wanted to use a container from the comps. We don't have to use this one. We obviously know how to work with Ollama, so that's totally fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and comment this out, and we'll just keep it around here, and maybe at some point I can ask somebody questions about this. This Hugging Face token doesn't look like it's set right. Oh, well, I guess it's here and then it's there, which is fine. But I'm just going to take this out of here, and we'll take this one out, and I'll comment this out for now. If anyone solves it and figures it out, big bonus points. If you can get it run on a CPU, huge bonus points. Because I've been trying to get vLLMs to run forever, and it's just very finicky based on the configuration. So if we can't use that one, I'm going to stop the video here, but we will try something else, okay?